Hello, everybody. Thank you for all bearing with us in this virtual and somewhat blended adventure with respect to the Alberta Pulse Growers Annual General Meeting today. My name is Leanne Fishbook. I am the Executive Director, and I'd like to take a few minutes to provide an overview of the format of this meeting. So if you are an eligible producer, you would have, we've asked you to pre-register for the meeting to allow us to confirm your availability to vote. Guests were able to register separately. And for all participants in the meeting today, we are using GoToWebinar. We will be recording the meeting as well, and we will have a video on our website to be viewed later. You can ask questions during the meeting in the comment question chat function and on the screen at any time. We have staff on site who will be able to assist you with your questions. And due to time constraints and obviously our delay today, we may not get to all the questions that have been asked, but we do really encourage you to reach out to us at the office, and we'll definitely be happy to have a conversation with you to address your concerns. To address the questions, you will see an orange box with an arrow on your screen, which opens the question chat function. And if during the meeting the box collapses, just press it again, and the orange box with the arrow will open up all the options for you to select. We will also have an opportunity to address resolutions and elections this year, and we will go over how that will work a little bit later when we get to that point on the agenda. At times, we will open the floor to questions. If you have a question, we will ask that you put your hand up and see the options in the orange box. And we will recognize you, open the microphone so you can ask it live. Please remember to introduce yourself prior to asking any question. And everyone who has registered in advance received a meeting package . Third-party voting organization during this meeting, and they're running our platform. So I'm going to proceed to the next slide, which is our 2022 AGM voting question. What is another common name for black beans? We have four choices: inky beans, licorice beans, turtle beans, and phantom beans. So this is a chance for you to try the voting platform. So please open your platform, refresh it, and take your vote. As you can see, Alberta grows black beans in southern Alberta, and they are a beautiful, high-quality product. We have a variety of recipes on our website that you can try Alberta-grown black beans. And so I encourage you to visit the albertapulse.com recipe section on our website to find a way to put more beans into your diet. So once we get to a point here, as with all voting platforms, there is going to be a slight delay for the calculation of the vote. And APG will conclude the vote when there are over 50% of the eligible voters who have completed their majority response. So where are we at with the vote? Could I please have an indication from my staff?
We have 21 votes, and licorice beans is ahead.
Okay. For the sake of continuing this, we're going to close the vote. And the answer for this particular test question is actually turtle beans. So now you can walk away knowing a little bit more about the beans in Alberta. So quorum for this annual meeting is 40 producers. And at present, we have how many attending? Could I have a confirmation from my staff? Nevin?
We have 56 attendees and 21 registered growers.
21 registered voters?
In the room.
In the room, and 56 in total. Excellent. Okay, our quorum is 40 producers, and so we will proceed with the meeting. I will now turn the meeting over to the chair of APG, Mr. Robert Semeniuk.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Semeniuk, and I am the chair of Alberta Pulse Growers Commission. I am from the Smoky Lake area where I farm with my wife. We farm about 5,000 acres of pulses, cereals, and canola. I'd just like to welcome everybody here. Thank you for your patience. Technology is always fun. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you here today in our virtual format. I want to thank the farmers for joining us at our AGM. Thank you for taking interest in your provincial commission. I'd like to acknowledge some of our other guests who have joined us virtually. We are pleased to welcome representatives of our provincial pulse organizations across Canada, our colleagues in our national organizations Pulse Canada, Grain Growers of Canada, and our colleagues in Alberta's provincial crop commissions, as well as members of Marketing Council. Finally, thank you to the other stakeholders of our organization who have also taken time to join us today. Now the slide for our directors. Here we are. So here's our directors. My mic hot? Here's our directors. Perfect, thank you. So here's all of our directors for the years 2020, 2021. Our provincial board is formed through the election of 2 directors from each of our 5 zones across Alberta, plus 2 director-at-large positions that are elected at our provincial AGM for a total of 12 directors. These are the elected farmer directors who have represented you this year. When I call out your name, just give a little wave or stand up, please. Zone 1, Greg Stamp, Vauxhall. Rodney Volk, Hayes. Zone 2, Allison Amater, Sylvan Lake. Kevin Oak, Carmangay. Zone 3, Shane Stridehorse, Nerlandia. Chris Allen, Fort Saskatchewan. Zone 4, Caroline Sekulik, Rycroft. Jerome Isaac, Meeting Creek. Zone 5, Don Shepard, St. Bride's, and myself, Robert Semeniuk from Smoky Lake. Director-at-large for beans is Will Mueller, Bow Island. And Director-at-large non-bean, Peter Constable, Spirit River. 2021 was a combination of virtual and in-person meetings, and I personally want to thank our directors for their perseverance in working through the virtual format, digging in when needed and not missing a beat through this challenging time. Slide 6 here. Listed here are the advisors who are elected by farmer members and represent farmers in each of the 5 zones across Alberta. It's a long list, I'm not going to read them off. Like the provincial board with the public health restrictions, it was equally as challenging for our zones to be as active as they had been in the past, and many zones resorted to virtual meetings to connect. Unfortunately, APG was not able to hold our combined director and advisor meeting in March of 2021, where we learn and network together as a full representation of pulse growers across the province. We are planning on holding an event in 2022, and we look forward to this engagement with our advisor teams. Now here's the APG staff. I'm going to list them off. So we start with Leanne Fishbook, our executive director. Rhonda Lefreniere, our business manager. Just give a little wave if you're here. Thank you, Rhonda. Dr. Jen Walker, our research manager. Rachel Peterson, communications. Nevin Rosasan, policy and program specialist. Dr. Jagrup Kaloon, research officer. Jolene Watson, levy coordinator. Carmen Mine, office administrator. And Deborah McLennan, food and nutrition coordinator. And that's right, people, we have 2 doctors on staff, so you're welcome. Our staff also kept a full virtual meeting schedule and worked to make sure directors had appropriate information at their disposal to make good decisions on behalf of the sector. Their focus is on APG's 5 core focus areas of research, extension, communication, advocacy, and operations. I appreciate their hard work and diligence in these challenging times and like to thank them for their service to the organization. These are highly capable staff of your organization, and they are all present on this virtual meeting today. So I'm going to look for the approval of the agenda. One slight change, it's not really a procedural thing, it's just who will be presenting the recognition of outgoing directors. And that'll be Peter. Oh, it's changed on yours already. So Peter will be doing so we will accept the agenda as presented. Of note, this year we'll be holding elections for the 2 director-at-large positions, and we will have presentation of 2 resolutions during this meeting. Same as last year, Apg has chosen to have directors move and second the procedural motions to keep the agenda flowing smoothly and limit technical challenges with the virtual process. Eligible voters are requested to please use the question chat function to ask any questions discussing any of the motions during the meeting. We have staff monitoring the chat, and they will advance questions to us to address or share answers directly in the chat. With the agenda up there, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda of the 2022 APG AGM. Greg Stamp, can I have a seconder? Don Shepard. Any discussion? Let's put it to the vote.
Please ensure to refresh your screen between votes. I was just about to say. This passed.
Thank you very much. Now I will be looking to approve the minutes from the 2021 annual general meeting of the Alberta Pulse Growers. Minutes are available by following the orange arrow on your screen and in the drop-down menu. Please let us know in the question chat function if you have any questions related to the motion or minutes. I will look for a motion to approve the minutes from the APG AGM. Allison, second by Rodney. Is there any discussion? I will now call for the vote. Please remember to refresh your platform and cast your vote on the motion. It is passed. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to move to the next agenda item, the Apg Reports, and we will start this section with our Apg highlight video for 2020-21. the 2020-2021. You can refer to the chair's report on page 2. It's also available under news on the APG website. I'm going to give you a little short synopsis of my own personal thoughts of how it went. Virtual, a word I've had to live by through 2020-21. Everything came a little more challenging as we navigated through the progression and regression of COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. Throughout the year, the staff and board members of APG persevered through and still managed to hit the marks on our vision, pulses on every farm, on every plate. This being our first full year into our new strategic plan with the themes, grow, move, and use, the path forward was set. With the extra layer of difficulty the pandemic restrictions were putting on us to get business as usual done, having a clear roadmap paid off. Regular meetings were held with a mixture of virtual and socially distanced in person. We got it done. Projects were all still reviewed and money allocated where our vision and mission guided us. It wasn't easy, but that's what we as farmers are used to. We learned to navigate, pivot, maneuver, steer, pilot, whatever fancy other term you want to use to insert here to stay relevant and on point, to make sure that your Alberta Pulse Grower member voice was heard and keep pulses thriving into the future. As you'll hear later in this presentation, we have some challenges ahead, but I believe with the principles that are laid out for our board and staff, this organization is in a very good position to handle those obstacles and keep the momentum going. So now we will go on to the Audit and Finance report. I'd like to invite the chair of the Audit and Finance Committee, Zone 2 Director Kevin Oak, to present the financial report.
Okay, thank you, Robert. On behalf of the board, I am presenting the 2020 to 2021 financial statements. So APG has been tasked to provide value for Alberta's pulse farmers, and I think we can confidently say that we have and will continue to invest our farmers' checkoff dollars wisely and prudently. The value of retaining some surpluses from good years is evident, as APG will experience lower revenues than expected next year due to the drought, as has been mentioned at some of the other meetings that we've been at lately. So I am happy to report, however, that we will still be able to maintain our funding for research, market development, and other activities that provide the value that our members have come to expect from APG. So if you could please reference pages 17 to 32 in your copy of the annual report for more detailed information. We engaged MNP LLP as our auditors for the audit, and the audit was completed for the fiscal year ending July 31st, 2021. Auditors presented the audit findings to the board on October 26, 2021, and I am very pleased to report that APG received a clean audit. The auditors have supplied an independent and qualified opinion based upon the stipulation that they are only able to audit the funds that APG receives from dealers through service fee collection. This statement is clearly outlined on page 19 in the independent auditor's report. I'd like to begin with the statement of financial position for the organization. The detail is on page 21, beginning with a summary of the statement of financial position, or otherwise known as the balance sheet, for the organization as of July 31st, 2021, in comparison with July 31st, 2020. Here's some of the comparative highlights. Our total assets have increased slightly, primarily due to interest gains on investments, but our liabilities have decreased, reflecting more efficient processes using direct deposit payments to vendors and efficient cutoff management at the year end. With member equity, APG has an accumulated surplus of $2.4 million as at the end of July 2021. And of that $2.4 million, the provincial office has $2.1 million, and the 5 zones have oversight of the remaining $239,000. Within our equity, APG is also seeing an anticipated decrease in capital assets. APG reserves are also being depleted with expenditures of over $500,000 from last year. And those reserves are contracted projects and other APG agreements that have multiple year commitments. All funding to research and larger commitments like support to Pulse Canada is set aside at once and placed into reserves for expenditure over time in a phased approach. This practice provides assurance to our partners that we can meet our commitment to the whole project or the activity that we're working on over its lifespan. So assets equal liabilities plus equity, and as you can see in the slide, and that APG is in a strong position to fulfill commitments to our partners moving forward. Next is slide 14 here, revenues and expenditures, or otherwise known as the income statement as of July 31st, 2021. The detail related to revenue and expenditure is on page 22 of your annual report. The main revenue of the organization is of course, service fees. And in 2020 to 2021, this totaled $5.7 million. And in the previous year, 2019 to 2020, it was $4.4 million. So APG does continue to collect 0.75% of all cash sales on pulse crops. Other revenue comes primarily from project grants through the Canadian Agriculture Program, advertising revenue for pulse crop news, and interest. Thanks to a steady increase in pulse crop prices and levy collection, the total revenue increased to $5.7 million, or about $768,000 more than the previous year. On the expenditure side, APG spent $4.3 million, down only slightly by $160,000 from last year. This can be seen specifically in areas of research and any areas that have substantial in-person engagement efforts, including administration, communication, and risk management. With the continuing public health recommendations limiting travel and gatherings, virtual meetings did dominate our engagement opportunities, unfortunately. APG has a net income this previous year of $1.36 million, which is up from last year. So slide number 15, the service fees overview. This slide represents the distribution across pulse crop types for service fees collected. And peas continue to be the primary source of service fees for the organization. APG had a refund request of 5.9%, which is up slightly from last year. And now I am prepared to answer questions at this time from the membership on the statements and financial information. So please raise your hand if you're here, or place your question in the chat questions function of and the staff will bring it to our attention. Okay, so I don't think we have any questions. So good job to the staff who prepared these presentations. So this will be the end of the financial statement presentation, and I encourage you to read the statements in detail in your copies in the annual report. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us or staff after the meeting. I would like to thank the members of the Audit and Finance Committee and the staff for their hard work and for the work of our auditors, MNP LLP. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the Alberta Pulse Growers 2020-2021 financial statement. Do I have a mover? Jerome Isaac. A seconder? Rodney Volk. Any discussion? All right, then I will put it to the vote. Please refresh your platform and cast your vote for the motion. It is passed. Thank you. I am also now looking for a motion to appoint MNP LLP as auditors for 2021-2022 fiscal year. Can I have a mover of that motion? Don Shepard. A seconder? Will Mueller. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. Please remember to refresh your platform and cast your vote.
It's going now. It's going now.
Please refresh your screen one more time.
Good, we are passed. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, and the rest of the Audit and Finance Committee and staff for your work this past year. I will now ask Leanne to share a brief update on what APG is looking at for 2022.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm presenting a brief update on APG's future direction. APG continues to work through its new strategic plan and focusing under the 3 areas of grow, move, and use. This plan was adopted on August 1st of 2020, and the staff and the board always keep it in mind when working together to meet the needs of the sector. Under the grow area, this focuses on investments in research, environmental adaptation, and grower support and extension to achieve our vision of a pulse on every farm. A key initiative in 2022 is the development of the National Pulse Research Strategy. This is a collaboration across Canada with other provincial pulse organizations and Pulse Canada, which has developed into the national strategy that will be shared with researchers and others in preparation for the next science cluster application, and will also be used to capitalize on other funding opportunities outside of the agri-science cluster program. Working with our colleagues to achieve consensus on research helps us strategically direct funding for the best outcomes for our membership. We are anticipating a significant investment into the national strategy in the upcoming year as we work through research project reviews and our submission to the agri-science cluster program in 2022-23. MOVE defines areas of investment and activity where we support national organizations and focus on advocacy, market access, and transportation, aiming for a growing the trade opportunities and building a strong and vibrant supply chain. For APG, advocacy has been at the forefront of our MOVE theme. To support our national organizations like Pulse Canada and Grain Growers of Canada, this continues to be a priority. Messages on Pulse issues related to market access and the supply chain have been important to share with the federal government. And as seen through an example, containercrunch.ca advocacy efforts. In addition, pulses play a significant role in the sustainability story for Canadian agriculture and consideration of how government views technologies that farmers continue to need access to for growing the crops we export that sustain the economy. Our advocacy voice is getting stronger. Advocacy is also being strengthened within Alberta, broadening our Team Alberta Crops membership to now include Alberta sugar beet growers, potato growers of Alberta, Alberta seed growers, and the Alberta Beekeepers Association. Having the diversity of the crop and the apiculture sector working together will allow us greater impact on our messages provincially. It is not going to be easy, but it will be important to continue to have us work together for our farmer members on the issues we all agree on. APG is pleased to act as an administrative lead on this revitalized partnership. Use reaches out addressing increased value-added opportunities, public trust, and education efforts, and addresses the second part of our vision, pulses on every plate. Under this area of focus, APG has collaborated with many crop sector organizations and others to support requests for changes to school curriculum. In addition to advocacy in this area, APG has been proactive, developing educational models that are available to teachers, which use pulses as examples in relevant areas of the curriculum, like agriculture histories for social studies and food diversity and sustainable practices for the science curriculum. We are continuing to work with our colleagues in the agriculture sector to provide classroom-ready educational materials for easy incorporation in the curriculum, aiming to communicate relevant real-life agricultural examples. In addition, Apg shares information with the value-added sector to encourage establishment of pulse processing facilities in Alberta. We grow excellent feedstock here, and we know that we are close to seeing more development take place. Another significant project we are working on is with Marketing Council, and this is to discuss and develop bylaws for the organization. We have been asked by Marketing Council to create bylaws that will assist in reducing our regulatory burden to the government through removal of some regulatory items, which can be put into a new set of bylaws for the organization. This will help make our organization's regulatory process more efficient, less burdensome, making it easier for government and for us. Work will be undertaken this year, and there'll be a presentation of new bylaws to the membership at our next annual general meeting. So please be watching for that update. Finally, it is my duty to share our budget forecast, which was created and revisited in 2021. And it is the best estimates of revenue and expenditures that we understand at the time. This year, we are forecasting a revenue of $4.3 million from service fees, based upon the sales of the different pulse crops we grow in the province. The remainder of the revenue will come from other sources like interest and any outstanding grant funding, to total $4.5 million. As in history, we expect Field P to be our primary source of funding. This pie chart forecasts the distribution of income across all pulse crops grown in the province. So we are also forecasting expenses of $5.7 million. And they are distributed along the areas of our strategic themes: grow, move, and use. These three strategic theme categories comprise 83% of the total anticipated expenditures for the organization. The remaining expenditures are under service fees refunded and operating costs. This leaves Apg with an anticipated net loss of $1.2 million, which we expect to cover through our $2.1 million surplus from this past year. This will leave approximately $900,000 for investment and opportunities presented to us in the upcoming year. I'd like to thank the board and the staff for their hard work this year. It was definitely a challenging year, and in so many aspects, I know that we are well prepared for 2022, thanks to good planning and resourcefulness. I am prepared to answer any questions related to what I have just presented, so I will look to the microphone here or over to the virtual audience and see if there are questions. Okay, no questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Leanne. I will now turn the meeting over to Shane Stridehorst, who will lead the discussion on item 7 of the agenda, introducing the Pulse Industry Award winner for 2022.
Thanks, Robert. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shane Stridehorst. I'm a grain farmer from Nearlandia, which is about an hour and a half northwest of Edmonton. I'm a director on the provincial board representing Zone 3, and it is an honor to introduce this year's recipient of the 8th Annual Alberta Pulse Industry Innovator Award. An industry innovator is a person or organization that has worked to help nurture and shape the pulse industry and has contributed to the success of the industry as it is today. Innovators have contributed to the industry through various areas, including production, marketing, research, extension, processing, management, promotion, and innovation. This year's award is being presented posthumously to an individual many of you know and remember, Mr. Cliff Sear. Cliff had a tremendous impact on the establishment and growth of the pulse industry in Alberta. Born and raised on a farm near Barrhead, he began raising cattle and growing commercial grains. Never afraid to be a leader and take a risk and try something new, Cliff became a seed grower in 1983 and was one of the first farmers in his area to grow peas in the late 1980s. He continued to grow peas on his farm through the 1990s and tried another obscure new crop, faba beans, in the late 90s. He saw potential in this new crop and acquired the rights to snowbird faba beans shortly thereafter. The successful establishment of faba beans as a viable crop option in Alberta is largely due to Cliff's foresight and efforts and promotion. At its most significant production in 2012 to 2014, nearly 100,000 acres of faba beans were grown in Alberta, many of them of the snowbird variety. Cliff was a big supporter of research and worked hard to promote pulse crops in Alberta. Along with Rick's Pedigreed Seeds, Sear Seed Farms co-hosted many farm and plot tours. Cliff was proud and very happy to showcase faba beans along with various new pea varieties in Apg Zone 3 research and demonstration trials that were planted on his farm. Many farmers both inside and outside of Zone 3 learned about the benefits and the potential of pulse crops and saw them up close for the first time on these tours. Many of these farmers, myself included, subsequently became regular growers of peas and faba beans. Cliff was actively involved in promoting pulse crops and crops in general through his work on Prairie Grain Development Committee, Alberta Seed Growers, and Alberta Pulse Growers. He was a longtime member of the Apg Zone 3 Advisory Board and a very active participant in it. Sadly, Cliff Sear passed away September 15, 2021, and he will be missed greatly. We will all remember his sense of humor, his infectious laugh, and his mischievous smile. Cliff was a pioneer in the pulse industry in Alberta, and we thank him for his many lasting contributions and honor him with this award. Apg will be presenting this award to Greg Sear, Cliff's son, who continues his family's business at Sear Seed Farms.
Congratulations to Cliff's family. And we want you to know that many of us have very fond memories of spending time with Cliff, and he will certainly be missed. Apg will now discuss resolutions received for consideration at this annual general meeting. I'd like to again recognize Shane Stridehorse to lead the resolution process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolutions offer the membership a chance to bring issues and ideas forward to the Provincial Board for consideration. A resolution that is passed here today will become an item for discussion at the Provincial Board where Apg can choose to act on the request. As with all resolutions that have been passed by the membership, they will be considered at the convenience of the Board. The process of resolutions began with notification in fall 2021 at regional meetings and through our various communication tools. Apg was open to receive resolutions until January 14, 2022, and we did receive 2 resolutions for consideration by the deadline. There were no resolutions received after January 14, and Apg does not accept resolutions from the floor during this meeting. The process today will offer the chance for the movers and seconders of the resolutions to speak in favor of their motions. We will then open the floor for anyone to speak in opposition of the resolution. Please raise your hand. We will open your microphone and state your name prior to speaking. Once we have completed presentation of opposition remarks, we will return to the mover and seconder to close with their comments before we call the question. So the first resolution, which is 1-2022, which reads very, very similar to resolutions that were brought forward at Alberta canola yesterday and Alberta wheat this morning. The proposed federal government 30% emissions reduction. Whereas the federal government is proposing a 30% reduction in absolute GHG emissions by 2030, which would include chemical fertilizer reductions used in crop production. And whereas nitrogen is a staple component in profitable whole farm grain and livestock production in Canada. And whereas, as producers, we feel this will jeopardize our profitability, sustainability, and competitiveness, be it resolved that Apg and like-minded commissions demand to be included in a transparent discussion with the federal government on what absolute emissions entails and what is the baseline date for the calculation of any said reduction? The mover is Michael Burry and the seconder is Tom Jackson. Do we have Michael online with us to speak to his resolution? Michael, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm here. Michael Burry from Zone 5. I brought this resolution forward to the other two commissions, canola and wheat, and we passed it there, but that doesn't matter. What I was very concerned about was that they weren't using any science in this reduction. It was just a blanket, well, from what I can see, it's a blanket reduction. There's no room to expand production. It's going to hit people that are high input users that have the ability to grow a lot of grain on their farms. And if you're going to use a 30%, it's going to come out of farmers' incomes, and income and profit is what pays for mortgages and combines and all the good stuff. So anyways, I think that this policy as it stands is going to increase the cost of food for consumers and lower income for producers of all commodities in Canada. So I'd like your support on this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Is Tom with us to speak as well in support? Tom, the floor is yours.
I support what Michael said and waive my right.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Is there anyone in the House or online who is prepared to speak in opposition to the resolution? If so, please raise your hand to be recognized. We will unmute your microphone, and please state your name prior to speaking. Okay, hearing no comments to oppose, I will call for the question. All in favor, please use your voting platform to cast your vote for or against Resolution 1-2022.
The vote has passed with 26 votes. We do have someone online who has raised their hands, Jacob Cotty. Jacob, do you have a question? We do not have a question online. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nevin. We'll proceed to the next resolution, which is 2-2022, Provincial Board Approval of Zone Research Projects to Avoid Duplication. Whereas there is the possibility of duplication of efforts and the risk that zones do not have the resources to properly evaluate research programs, and whereas APG zones have had a history of formulating their own budgets, allocating resources to different projects put on by third parties and organizations not affiliated with APG. There have been a few times where the quality, need, and concern of duplication has come into question. Therefore, be it resolved that the Provincial Board must approve all research projects of all zones. Furthermore, APG is to consider removing the need for zones to formulate a budget. Zones would concentrate efforts on recruitment and having at least one field day or producer meeting to highlight the efforts of APG. Planning of these events would still go through the zones, but any funding requests would go through Research Committee. So the mover of this resolution is Tim Vanderhoek, and the seconder is Thomas Levart. Do we have Tim with us to comment in support? Tim, the floor is yours.
Okay, Tim Vanderhoek here from Zone 1. The reason I put this through is I feel that there's too much research done by the zones, or it's almost forced onto the zones through this whole budget system, and I feel zones are doing research that's not always of value to the levy payers, and even like doing scholarships or things like that. I think with budgets getting tight like they have been, every farmer is looking to save money here and there, and I think with our levy money has to be the same. It needs to be screened, and we need to make sure we're getting the best value out of our levy money, which in turn means that we need to ensure that all research projects are of value to all the growers in that zone. And yeah, we just trying to make a way that we can ensure the most efficiency out of the dollars, or out of our levy dollars. We don't want our levy dollars being spent foolishly, and this is why that resolution came forward. That's all I have on it.
Thanks, Tim. Do we have Thomas with us today as well? Thomas, the floor is yours to comment.
Oh, yeah, I have nothing to add. Tim summed it up well. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have anybody prepared to speak in opposition to the resolution? Please raise your hand to be recognized, and we will unmute your microphone. And please introduce yourself prior to speaking.
Yes, we have Peter Hoff with his hand raised. Peter, please unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Peter Hoff, Zone 2. I would just like to speak against the motion. As I understand it, one of the things that drew me to be involved in the zone was the opportunity to fine-tune the interests of the local producers, and the ability to see, on a very ground level what's happening in the zone. Our zone is actually quite large. It runs from Lacombe to Vulcan and from Sylvan Lake to Hanna, so there's a lot of diversity. One thing we noticed is that the RVT site was not indicative of some of the needs in the zone, so we were able to fine-tune that and put one in Three Hills. We were also kind of the epicenter of the Epiphytomyces outbreak, and we were able to use the zone money to actually work with Shamma Chatterton and local agronomists to take samples and help her in her research. And I think we also see some ARAs in our area that we can look at that are obviously doing projects within the zones. And so I think it's actually very helpful to have that that ability to see what's going on locally. And of course, we do still work together with the provincial board to make sure we're not duplicating. We're in connection with them in regards to some of the things that are being done in the provincial, and make sure that we don't do that replication, or and we take input from them as well to know if we're actually on target with some of the things we're doing too. So I think it's a value to our local zone members, for them to see that we're actually working in their communities with things, and so that's why I would speak against it.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Do we have anybody else to speak in opposition?
We do indeed. Jerry Good has his hand raised. Jerry, please unmute your mic.
There we go. Yeah, Jerry Good in Zone 2. I just want to support all the comments that Peter made, and just reinforce the fact that Zone 2 is such a big and diverse zone. We need some smaller projects within the zone. So I would like to vote against this resolution.
Okay, thank you for your comments. To close the discussion, I would like to return to Tim for any final comments.
We have one other attendee who has raised his hand, Chris Allen.
Hi, can you hear me okay, Nevin?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I think the takeaway from this is that we're not saying that research can't be done in the zones, and research should be done in the zones. The issue is the way the funding comes about and how it's being, and the decision to work with different groups. I looked at Zone 3, and what has happened, we've been going through a pea protein trial. We're in year 3 of that, and research funding got cut, and we're not going to be able to finish that trial. So there's $30,000 to $50,000 that potentially could go to the waste. It could be picked up again in a couple of years, but that's going to be 2 to 3 year old data. And I think if the decision around funding for these research projects was done through the central board, it would be managed a little bit better and be a little bit more thorough on investigating whether these projects should be done, and hopefully take them to completion. Because there is an issue with, we don't have the Ken Lopatinskis of the world anymore that are on these boards that can oversee and have done a lot of research. And I think that having the expertise at central board to see these through is imperative. This could also allow for a little more emphasis of the boards to be put on extension and policy and some other things that are very time consuming for central board, but we do need help on the central board. So I don't think this is a saying that we're not going to do research. I think it's just we're going to do it a little bit a different way and be a little more formal with it. Thank you.
We have Jerry Good. You have raised your hand. Go ahead.
No, that was a mistake. I didn't want to do that.
Thanks, Jerry. Tim, do you have any final comments in support of your resolution before we call the question?
Okay, Tim here again, sorry. I agree with Peter. Like, I agree each zone has its own special needs and there's special research for each zone. I don't disagree with what he says at all, but I do think that it needs to be gone through central, like Chris said. I feel like there is good projects, same as down south, we have dry beans. But we've had it where we'll do a project and you find out the project's been done 5 years ago. It's been done by another industry lead. It's been done with other people. And you're like, well, why did we spend this money on this for if we would have known that? Like, I've been the Zone 1 chair for the last few years. I am just a volunteer. So when we do research projects, I'm not checking on them all the time. I have my own business to manage. We send this money there and we're hoping it's getting the best value for it. And by doing this, we're just asking that this all goes through central so that we know it's the best value for our levy payers. We know, like Chris said, that it's being looked at by central staff, not just by the local zones who are just volunteer people who are farmers themselves and don't always have the time to ensure that the project is done the way they thought it was being done, or vice versa, right? So I agree with Peter. I don't want research to stop at all. I just ask that it goes through central to ensure the best value and that we get our best return on it. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Do we have Thomas with us for any final comment?
Yeah, Tom Levard here. Yeah, Tim and Chris summed it up quite well. What we're looking for, yeah, the accountability. We on these boards, like Tim said, we're volunteers, and it's we need that. We don't have anybody on our staff or anything like that, so I think it needs to go through central, and we can make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. Yeah, well said, Tim and Chris. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will call for the question then. All in favor, please use your voting platform to cast your vote for or against Resolution 2-2022.
The resolution 2022-2 has passed.
I'm waiting for my mic. We good? Thank you. And thank you to Michael Burry and Tim Vanderhoek for those bringing those resolutions forward. It's an important process in the whole scheme of things. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Thank you, Shane. So now we're going to move on to the election of directors. And thanks to, brought that forward. So I'm going to welcome Peter Constable, Director at Large Non-Bean, to lead the election of our directors.
Thanks, Robert. APG elects our 2 director-at-large positions at our AGM. Director-at-large positions are 2-year positions, and director-at-large reps could complete a total of 8 years if they're successfully elected, returning to their position. This year, both of APG's director-at-large positions were open for election as our recent director-at-large members have transitioned and were elected to directorships within their zones after their regional meetings in November. At the regional meetings, APG advertised that the nomination deadline for director-at-large positions was January 14th, 2022. APG has 1 position for which we elect the director-at-large for beans and 1 that represents all other pulse crops, the director-at-large for non-beans. APG received names for the 2 available positions. Bios are available in the AGM package under the orange arrow drop-down menu on your screens. Our process also allows us to ask for nominations from the floor. As defined by our regulations, APG requires that you are a member of the organization by having paid a service charge or levy selling pulses in Alberta in the past 2 years. The 2 nominees have been reviewed and they are compliant with our regulations, and their names can stand for the positions they have interest in. It is my privilege to call for nominations for the position of Director-at-Large Non-Bean. This position represents all pulse growers across the province who are not specific to dry beans. And we have 1 nomination from the deadline, and her name is Bev Wieben, and she was nominated by Neil Boyd. So at this time now, I'll call, is there any other nominations? Second call if there's any other nominations. And third and final call for nominations. Thank you. Could I please have a motion that nominations cease? Allison moved, Don second. Thank you. I also have the privilege to call for nominations for the position of Director-at-Large Bean, representing all dry bean growers. We have 1 nomination from our deadline, and his name is John Kolk, nominated by Will Mueller. Are there any other nominations? Second call for nominations. And third and final call for nominations. Okay, could I please have another motion for nominations to cease? Greg Stamp moves. Jerome Isaac, seconder. Thank you.
Congratulations, Bev and John. Thank you. We had the privilege of intermingling with them through the last couple of days here, and they are going to be a wonderful addition to the Alberta Pulse Growers Board. So thank you for your interest. We look forward to having you both join our organization. So on to other business. Is there any new business that's come before the organization? Please raise your hand and staff will unmute you or allow your question. Please also remember to introduce yourself prior to asking a question. Nothing? Perfect. All right. We like it when that happens. Means we're doing our job. So Just a handful of thanks, recognition to outgoing members. I'd like to turn this over to Peter again for one of the last items on the agenda.
Thanks, Robert. Today, APG is saying thank you to 2 directors who are completing their service after our AGM. Zone 4 Director Caroline Suckluck from Rycroft and Zone 1 Director Rodney Volk from Hayes. Caroline joined APG 6 years ago and quickly stepped up as a voice both provincially and nationally. Her interest and background has been in supporting the processing and marketing opportunities for APG in her work with the Apg Marketing Committee, as well as nationally as an Alberta rep at Pulse Canada. Caroline always provided important consideration for the full value chain, and as her farm and business grew, she recently stepped up to be the representative on AgSafe Alberta, working with the provincial board and improving her own business with safety and common sense solutions. She also has recently completed her time as a voice in the seed modernization consultations. Through her connections in the piece, she has helped to grow the Zone 4 advisor membership, supporting interest across the region for pulse crops. Especially, she's the one that got myself in the zone, and we didn't have too many advisors, so I commend her on her efforts. So, Rodney is also completing 6 years with APG. Rodney has been tireless in spearheading commitment to making sure farmers continue to have the tools they need to manage challenges on their farms. Rodney has been a persistent voice around the Prairie Pesticide Minor Use Consortium, a group of grower organizations that bring forward minor use recommendations and user-requested minor use label expansions so farmers can deal with pest issues. Rodney has taken this topic as well as bringing the farmer perspective directly through learning sessions with the PMRA, advocacy with Grain Growers of Canada as a volunteer producer during 2020 Grains Week, including representing Canadian agriculture internationally at conferences discussing how his farm considers sustainability. Rodney has also been active as a volunteer with APG visiting classrooms when APG has done educator outreach sessions sharing stories of growing dry beans. Rodney has been active at the Apg Marketing Committee and nationally with Pulse Canada, recently ending his term as vice chair of the national organization. Your voices will be missed around the APG directors table. As we are celebrating our AGM virtually today, please know that a token of our appreciation for your commitment to the organization will be sent your way shortly. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thanks again to Caroline and Rodney for all the good work they contributed to the organization during their time as directors. They will both be missed. We're excited to note that effective at the close of this meeting, APG will be welcoming directors to the organization. Peter Constable from Spirit River, who moves from a non-being director at large into a 3-year term as a Zone 4 director, and Will Mueller from Bow Island, who also leaves his being director at large position, moving to a 3-year term as Zone 1 director. Congratulations, and we look forward to having you join the board in your new roles. Congratulations to the newly elected directors at large as well. We look forward to having you join us at the provincial board. We look forward to your voices around the table. We've now come to the end of the agenda, and I wish to thank you for joining us today. As chair, I declare the meeting adjourned.